Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Affinity once again, and this time we're playing against a Sultai control deck. So let's get underway. Okay. This is our opener. It's not ideal, obviously. Quite like to have a second land or a Mox Opal or something to sort of get these things out a little bit faster. But we've got a decent number of 1-drops. Cranial Plating's a nice follow-up. Master of Ethereum as well. We can get some more mana going. So and we've got the Springleaf Drum, so I have that second mana. So we can get there, but it's not ideal. I think we're on the draw though, so happy enough to keep this. Plays Tarpit. Our opponent, Blue Cry, reads our articles, which is nice. So said good job on most of them. Obviously some of them not quite up to scratch, but yeah, it's always good to bump into people who read my articles. So we draw a Steel Overseer, which is nice, but obviously we would rather have had a land, I think. But still got another draw step for to find one. Just lead off with a Vault Scourge. It seems more impactful. Turn 1 Signal Pest on its own is not doing a great deal. And don't really fancy running out of just a Springleaf Drum or something. Might as well get some damage in. Taking Cranial Plating, which is fine. Don't have the mana to cast it anyway at the moment. Second Inquisition is a little annoying. Takes the Steel Overseer, but we still got a nice bunch of cheap. So we draw a Memnite, which is decent with this Signal Pest we're going to drop down. Off the Springleaf Drum actually, just to maximise the number of artifacts we're playing. Plays a Water Grave tapped, and Thought seizes us. Going to take the Master of Ethereum. So yeah, getting our hand rather aggressive, but we've got quite a healthy presence on the battlefield, so it's not the worst situation. Can get into 4 here and then play a second Vault Scourge. It has Liliana of the Veil. Like the Memnite, seems though that seems like the least impactful card we've got. Deck's pretty good against Liliana. It's something I've noticed anyway. We usually have enough things to sack, and then dealing 1 damage with all our little weenie creatures is fairly easy, particularly as a lot of them are evasive, etc. So Liliana's not the most impressive against our deck. Also we can just sort of pitch our hand fairly easily, so this card isn't usually too impactful. Obviously you still want to get rid of it as quick as possible, but I think in general, if you want to be Affinity is kind of the deck you want to be playing against the Liliana kind of deck. We can certainly deal with her fairly easily, so I'm going to kill off the Liliana and get in for 2. And draw a Mox Opal, which again I'm just going to run out. There's no point getting it hit by discard. Opponent has Ashiok, +2s, hits the Steel Overseer, and then a Golden Blast, and then Inkmoth Nexus also get exiled. Because it's on 5, we can't necessarily kill it, but we do draw a Cranial Plating, which means we can actually just kill our opponent here. He concedes to the Cranial Plating being dropped, as we'll have exactly 11. I think it's 4 off the Vault Scourges, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So yeah, can deal exactly 11 damage there to our opponent, and our opponent concedes. So managed to wrap that one up fairly quickly. The fairly aggressive hand disruption didn't do too much, and like I say, we can deal with Liliana's. So that worked out pretty well for us. Let's go on to game 2. So on the draw again. This is a fairly sketchy hand. If the island was a Darksteel Citadel, so we could get Opal on line straight away, then this hand would be pretty sick. We could get a turn 1 Ravager or a Cranial Plating down, which would be really nice. I kept this. I think it's possible this is a mulligan, because as it turns out, if we don't find a second land or another artifact, then we're kind of stuck with a hand that's just Ornithopter and Mox Opal, and Mox Opal can't even produce mana at that point, which is kind of what happens. Slightly greedy keep, I guess. We draw another Cranial Plating, so it's but just finding the mana to cast them. Draw another Mox Opal. Unfortunately, Mox Opal is legendary, so we can't really do too much with that. And I don't think you get an opportunity to tap them for mana with the legend rule as it stands, I don't believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think you have to choose straight away as soon as you play the other legendary permanent, and I can't tap the Opal for mana right now. That is a strategy when you've got Metalcraft, but if you haven't got Metalcraft, then I don't think that works. One plays a Rainforest. It's not really doing a whole lot after we had such a sort of harrying hand disruption display from him, but maybe he ditched the hand disruption from after sideboarding, which might have been a good idea. I just had to lead off with an Outbound Ravager, nice answer to removal, etc. that he might be packing, and Cranial Plating is not doing a great deal just yet because we've only got a few artifacts out. So I'm planning on getting this down, and then maybe we can Thoughtcast to restock, or we can do the Opal trick and tap the first Opal for mana, and then cast the second one, keep it, and make 2 mana out of the turn. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, as the opponent has a mana leak for the Ravager. He's gone a bit more controlling than he was last game. Goth comes down as a 4/5, which is a little intimidating. I draw a Ravager, which I'm going to drop out. Then we can make 2 mana off our Opals. It looks like, and try and run out this Cranial Plating, so we can race our opponent in the sky with Ornithopter. But unfortunately, we don't have enough mana to actually equip and attack this turn, so we're just going to. Run attacks for 4, put this down to 16, and drops Scavenging. It's quite scary. One of the things I actually didn't notice so much, and should have kept a better eye on, I guess, is he actually has 1 green source at the moment, so Scavenging Ooze isn't as threatening as it could be. There's also not a lot in the graveyard. There's only 1 Arcbound Ravager, but as time goes on, it's something to be aware of. So I am going to play out the Springleaf Drum, equip my Cranial Plating, Ornithopter. I'm going to Thoughtcast. I could have played Cranial Plating instead, but I thought if I Thoughtcast we might be able to hit a land and then also be able to play the Cranial Plating. As it turns out, we do draw some lands. I'm going to draw out the Blinkmoth Nexus. I'm kind of hoping we're going to win through damage this time out, but if we've got double Cranial Plating, it might be that we go the Infect route. I'm not the best at deciding these things. I suppose I haven't mentioned it earlier, but I don't consider myself to be a good Affinity player. I do struggle with a lot of the decisions, and there are a lot of decisions to make in this deck. It's fun to play. But yeah, we get to run out the Cranial Plating there after the Thoughtcast finds us a land. So that turned out pretty nicely. We're going to get to hit for 6 in the air. But we have set ourselves up for a fairly hefty swing back. Opponent can hit us for 8, which when we're on 16 is pretty scary. Opponent plays a Liliana. Makes me sack. I'm going to sack the Ravager and just put a +1/+1 counter on the Ornithopter. Always a consideration there to sack some other stuff so you can get some more counters on a creature, but I kind of want all the stuff I've got. My mana producing stuff is useful. Even the Springleaf Drum. I suppose we maybe could have sacked the Springleaf Drum, but Doesn't make a great deal of difference actually anyway, because we've got cranial plating, so I'd rather have artifacts on the board than +1/+1 particular creature. So opponent Scavenger uses to get an extra +1/+1 counter, and he's going to be able to hit me for 8 here. So this is the difficult spot. We draw a Springleaf Drum. Sorry, and it's really a consideration of what we want to do here. Obviously we want to stay aggressive, but at the same time our opponent has got lethal on board, so we probably going to be forced into some sort of block next turn. He also has Liliana. Do we want to kill it? Do we not? In the end, I don't think I'm too bothered by Liliana. I've got a Springleaf Drum in hand, which I'm happy to keep in hand to pitch, and hopefully we can play the Master of Ethereum a bit later on, maybe next turn. We could try and run out the Master of Ethereum. Obviously it's going to be a sizable blocker given the number of artifacts we've got on the board, but obviously that runs the risk of us just getting hit with removal, and we've got a decent amount of mana. I suppose we could have played the Master of Ethereum and then we'd still have the ability to activate one of our Nexus lands and then block if needs be if he had the removal for the Master of Ethereum. Maybe that would have been the better play overall. I guess so. What I end up doing is I activate Blink Moth. My initial intention was to attack Liliana, but then the more I thought about it, the more I thought it's not actually all that relevant to attack Liliana. Equally, we can attack for lethal potentially, because we've got 2 cranial planes. We could stick them all on the Ornithopter. We could stick one on the Ornithopter, one on the Blink Moth Nexus. We haven't seen any removal from him so far, so does he have it, does he not? Opponent acknowledges that this was kind of tough. I didn't know exactly how to go about it. I end up splitting my damage, and then I've got an Ink Moth that I'm keeping back to chump. I think maybe we should have been a bit more defensive. Maybe we could have just run out the Master of Ethereum and then just tried to get in with the Ornithopter. As it turns out, he has a Murderous Cut, I believe. Yeah, which kills the Blink Moth. But I think we'd ended up in a similar situation, I suppose, otherwise. I think he would have been happy to take 6, and then he would have killed my Master of Ethereum, and then I'd have been chumping with a Nexus. So, we'd have been in a very similar spot either way, and at least this way we'd get in 6 damage, I guess. Let me know what you think in the comments. So he's attacking for 8, so we're going to have to block. Activate my income removal spell for it. Turns out he doesn't, so we're just going to block the Tarmogoyf to save as many points as damage as possible. Liliana makes everyone discard. He discards a Goyf, which is significant because he does have, so that is another thing that he could eat. There's quite a lot of, there's at least 1 creature in my graveyard, actually just the one, so need to be aware of that as well, just in terms of how much he can pump that scavenger. I actually thought he might be able to get up to 5, which made me a little bit more worried in this situation, but he can't because he hasn't got a second green source. But he could always draw one. So I found Darksteel Citadel, which I'm going to run out because that means I can attack for 7 with this Ornithopter, which obviously we are going to try. That is potentially lethal. One has Feed the Clan, which he must have brought in from the sideboard. It's going to be able to gain him 10 life, which puts us a considerable way off being able to hit him for lethal. It's a shame we can't have double black, because then we could have actually just hooked up the plating here. Wouldn't have been lethal though, would it? So I suppose either way that was a fairly good play for our opponent. 7. I was a little bit worried that I might be dead on the swing back here, but I run out Master of Ethereum. And provided you can't find 2 green sources, a second green source, we're still alive here. Though he's got Liliana now, he can force me to sack something. So it's all a little bit complicated. I'd like to say I had this whole game plan all figured out, but I really didn't. So opponent makes me sack with Liliana. I'm going to sack the Ornithopter, given that that's the most useless thing that I've got at the moment, and we still could attack in the air for lethal with the Income Off Nexus. So I'm happy to go with that, and obviously we keep the Master as a blocker. Fortunately, because of the way we tapped, we can't actually activate the Income Off Nexus and block, so had he found a second green source he could have killed us here, but it turns out he doesn't. I can't quite remember what he got. Oh, he finds Tassiger, which is great because it doesn't do anything really. We draw another Cranial Plating, which we don't need. Then we're just going to hook up both platings to our Income Off Nexus and get in there. Couldn't eat an Ornithopter, but it has no impact, and we get to hit him for 16 poison. So it all worked out. I got a little bit lucky, I imagine. Maybe could have played this slightly better, but it did work out in the end, and we managed to pull through against Sultai Control in a very interesting match.